शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं सच्चारचर परिपूर्णोऽहं शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं नित्यानन्दस्वरूपोऽहं शिवोऽहं 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 शिव शिव शंभु शंकरा हर 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 महादेवरा शिव शिव शंभु शंकरा शिव शिव शंभु शंकरा हर 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 महादेवा शिव शिव शंभु शंकरा हर 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 महादेवरा शिव शिव शंभो शंकरा हर 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 महादेवा शिव शिव शंभो शंकरा हर 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 महादेवा शिव शिव शंभो शंकरा हर 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 महादेवा शिव शिव शंभो शंकरा हर 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 महादेवा शिव शिव शंभो शंकरा हर 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 महादेवा शिव शिव शंभु शंकरा हर 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 महादेवा शिव शिव शंभु शंकरा हर 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 महादेवा शिव शिव शंभु शंकरा हर 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 महादेवा शिव शिव शंभु शंकरा हर 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 महादेवा शिव शिव शंभु शंकरा हर 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 महादेवा शिव शिव शंभु शंकरा हर 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 महादेवा शिव शिव शंभु शंकरा हर 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 महादेवा शिव शिव शंभु शंकरा हर 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 महादेवा शिव शिव शंभु शंकरा हर 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 महादेवा शिव शिव शंभु शंकरा हर 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 महादेवा शिव शिव शंभु शंकरा Shankara, Har 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 Mahadeva. Har 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 Mahadeva. Har 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 Mahadeva. बोलिए सर्वेश्वर भगवान की जय। सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। ॐ शान्तेः शान्तेः शान्तेः।
Welcome to Satsang. I had a question come in advance. Usually the advance questions come on this paper, but I had one slipped under my door. So I thought, well, we'll start with that one, and then we'll come to any other questions that anyone has here or that have come on our regular sheet in advance. And the one that was slipped under my door was about procrastination and why do we do it and how can we stop procrastinating. So it seemed like something that is probably applicable to most of us. The issue with procrastination is that we usually see it just as a problem of doing. And so if you said to most people, why shouldn't I procrastinate? Most of us, what we think about it or what we feel badly about is just, I'm not able to get as much done as if I didn't procrastinate. Obviously, if I did things now, I would get them done. And by putting them off and not doing them, I don't get them done. But procrastination is actually much deeper than that. And that's why it's something we talk about in Satsang. It's not merely a matter of how can I be efficient. If we know we're procrastinating, it means we already know there's an issue. We know we have something to do or a lot of things to do. We know we're not doing them. And so the question on a spiritual level is, why is this a problem? If we're not in here looking at our efficiency and effectiveness and output, and we're in here looking at our spiritual selves, why is procrastination a problem? And the reason it's a problem is because of something in psychology that we call cognitive dissonance. And what cognitive dissonance describes is how, in order for me to be peaceful inside, in order for me to be happy, I need there to be a consonance, a concert of what I think and how I act. If there's too much dissonance between what I think and what I do, it's going to cause distress in my life. This is why, for example, if you ask most people who are still smoking cigarettes why they haven't quit, I mean, it kills you. Why are you still smoking? What you get is either Oh, I hate it. I'm really trying to quit. I'm quitting on Monday. I'm quitting next month. I'm quitting on my birthday. Or you get the exact opposite end of the spectrum, which is it's not really bad for you. That's all propaganda. It's a conspiracy theory against the tobacco producers. It's Big Brother trying to control us. So-and-so's grandmother smoked 3 packs a day and lived to be 95. There's really not a problem with smoking cigarettes. And the reason that that happens, if we look at that aspect of dissonance, is if I know that smoking is bad and I'm smoking, there's only 2 ways to bring my thoughts and my actions into alignment. Either I change my action or I change my thought. And most of us begin by trying to change our actions. So we try to quit smoking. If I'm not able to, or if I think I'm not able to, of course everyone's able to, but if I think I'm not able to, eventually that dissonance in me between knowing how bad it is and continuing to do it is going to create a situation where I actually change how I think. Can't change my actions. I've decided I'm not going to be able to quit smoking. Therefore, I quit how I think about smoking. And this becomes a deep problem in our lives because we end up lying to ourselves. We end up changing our ethics and our values and our beliefs if we don't act accordingly. So if I know that I should be getting up every morning because it's a good thing to do to get up early, I should meditate in the morning, I should have a spiritual practice in the morning. The first couple of days, I may say, well, I'll hit the snooze button and I'll give myself a break. Wasn't my day. I went to sleep too late. I'm under the weather. Whatever it may be. But if enough days go in a row that I set the alarm for 4 a.m. and I'm not out of bed till 8, by the end of the week, I'm going to have decided that getting up early isn't so hot after all. That there's really no need to get up early. That again, this is just propaganda. That, those spiritual people are trying to derail us and, not give us our good night's sleep. And there's some spiritual conspiracy against the healthy working population. I'll come up with whatever rationalization I need to so that I don't feel badly about myself day after day after day, knowing that I should get up early and not. And this is why procrastination becomes a problem. Because whatever it is I'm procrastinating doing, very soon I'm going to tell myself it doesn't actually matter. It's not actually important. And my entire sincerity in my life ends up disappearing. And this is why whatever I make a commitment to do, we should do. This is why we should be careful about what we commit. And so, for example, if you're used to getting up at 8 a.m. every day, and you decide it's important to get up early, well, you may not want to start with 4 a.m. That may be enough of a shock to the system that unless you've got really great discipline, really great willpower, or a bedmate or roommate who's doing this with you, who pulls the covers off and kicks you out and throws cold water on you, if you don't have that, it may be too much to actually go from sleeping till 8 or 9 to getting up at 4. And so that's all right. So the first week, set the alarm for 6:30. And then a week later, set it for 6:15. And a week later, set it for 6. And allow yourself to gradually do it. So that not only do you end up with the benefit of getting up early, the benefit of a morning meditation practice, but you end up with something that is just as important, which is a strong mental you, a strong consonance between what you think and what you do, and that actually changes the very nature of who you are. Because we make decisions about ourselves based on how we live. Ideally, I know who I am, I know what my values and ethics are, and I live accordingly. But a lot of times it goes the other way. I make decisions, I engage in behaviors that have nothing to do with my values or ethics or what I want. I just do them because I'm lazy or I'm addicted or everybody's doing it or whatever the reason may be. And I then make a judgment about who I am based on that behavior. So either I'm someone with willpower. I made a decision to get up early. I got up early. I'm someone committed to a spiritual path. That becomes the identity that I give myself when I commit to getting up and I get up. If I commit to getting up and I don't, then again, either when cognitive dissonance kicks in, I decide not that important. Whoever said that getting up early was important clearly was off his rock or off her rock or out to get us, nobody special, whatever it may be. Or I internalize the dissonance and I create an identity that I'm lazy, that I never follow through, that I don't have any willpower, that I don't have any discipline, that I don't do anything I commit to doing. And that's a tragically destructive and toxic self-identity. And so not procrastinating is essential, not just having to do with whatever the job is or the task is, but it's essential to how I identify myself. If there is something that you know, I'm going to keep putting this off, do one of two things. Either decide right now, I'm not going to do it. And just suffer the consequences, whatever they may be. But just decide, I'm not going to do it. Or do it immediately. Get it out of the way. It's like trying to get kids to eat their food, right? You don't give them dessert first. You say, eat your spinach first. Then you get ice cream. What we know is if the ice cream is hanging there as this carrot, even if they don't necessarily like their spinach, they're going to do it to get to the ice cream. Get the stuff that I don't want to do out of the way first. Most of us work the other way. We start in the morning by doing the things that are easy and fun and enjoyable, and okay, I've got 15 things to do. Let me do the stuff I enjoy most first. And the problem with that on a very logistic level is that it leaves the stuff that I don't really want to do, the stuff that may be more difficult or more boring or whatever reason I don't want to do it, it leaves it until the time of day when I don't have nearly as many energy resources to do it. It's a lot easier to decide, not today, at 5 in the evening, than it is at 8 in the morning. So start with the things that you don't want to do. You'll always do the stuff that's fun. You'll always do the stuff that's meaningful. Start with the things that you have a habit of procrastinating. Get them out of the way first. Or simply decide I'm not going to do it and suffer whatever the consequences of that may be. But don't keep putting something off. And tell yourself, either I'm going to do it by the end of this day, or I'm going to just Decide I'm not going to do it and suffer the consequences. Don't allow yourself to get into that, I'm a lazy person, I have no discipline, I'm a procrastinator, self-identity. Because then it causes not only this one thing to suffer, but it causes your entire life to suffer. And just as thoughtless action is a problem, we all know the consequences of acting without thought. When we do things that we didn't think about, we say things that we didn't think about. There's always negative repercussions of that. But just as there's a problem with thoughtless action, there's also a problem with actionless thought. And simply having a thought, I'm going to do this, if there's no action, is just as much of a problem as the thoughtless action. And so we need to ensure that neither are we acting thoughtlessly, nor are we having thoughts about something we should do and not doing them. Both of those are the problem. So, solution to procrastination is do it now. And lastly, it's really it's just a habit we get into. Very rarely, I mean, sometimes there's some deep psychological block against something, but 9 times out of 10, it's just a habit we've gotten into. It's just mental weakness that says, it's okay. And that's just not a good habit for our lives, because there are things we do really want to do. And a lot of times those do require discipline and willpower, like teaching yourself to get up early if you're used to sleeping till 8 or 9. And if you've already determined that you're the type of person with no willpower, because you've been procrastinating, you've gotten yourself into a habit of procrastination, then you'll never be able to do the things that really matter to you, that take a little bit of extra effort. So you want to make sure that your self-identity is strong, disciplined, willpower, actionful thought, thoughtful action, both. So before going to our sheet of questions in advance, I'm happy to open it up if anyone here has any questions. Yes, you and then you too. Yes. Great. Well, first of all, congratulations. A, for choosing the path of medicine. Not an easy choice. B, for being in your final year of medical school. And C, for having the clarity to come on holiday to India in the final year of medical school. Because it's great. Here's the thing about life. It's not a buffet. It is a choice of package deals. And a lot of the new age Western psycho-spirituality would have us believe that life really was a buffet. And you could and you should really be able to have this and this and this and that and this and as much of it as you want in whatever combination you'd like. And I think that's a real big disservice. I mean, it comes from a great place of we have total freedom. But we have freedom to choose from amongst packages. You cannot simultaneously live full-time in LA and live full-time in Paris at the same time. You just can't. I mean, you can live in LA and vacation in Paris or vice versa. You can do 6 months a year. But you cannot live full-time in LA and full-time in Paris. You cannot, on a personal level in my life, you cannot be a sannyasi and be a mother. I mean, you can, mother people, but you cannot be a sannyasi and give birth to a child from your womb. 2 different packages. And it's important for us as we move through life to realize that what we're choosing is a package. If we allow ourselves to think that we really should be able to somehow have everything, and then the lack of being able to figure out how to fit everything in causes us great stress and depression and distress. And so as you're moving through your life, ask yourself not, how can I make this more of a buffet? How can I do what I really know I'm supposed to be doing, but also simultaneously have a heaping scoop of that and a bowl full of this that don't fit in that? Being a doctor it's a package. And it's a package that includes an incredible ability on many levels. An ability to heal, literally. An ability to bring ease, physical ease, mental ease, to dis-ease. Whether it's an actual disease through an injection, through medicine, or whether when you are a spiritually attuned doctor, hence my congratulations for coming to India on your holiday, you've got the ability and the wisdom to actually help people understand when their way of thinking or their lifestyle is actually at the root of what's causing them distress, and to actually be able to help people change their lifestyles, change their way of thinking. Doctors don't only write prescriptions. And so it's an incredible opportunity. It also, on a purely practical level, in terms of life choices, it's one of the very few life choices that ensures that no matter where you are in the world, you're always going to be able to make a living. There's no place, no situation I can imagine where being a doctor, you wouldn't be able to find meaningful work. Whether it's a village, whether it's a town, whether it's a city, wherever it is. And that's an incredible perk to a life package when you're young, when you don't necessarily know where you're going to want to live, when you don't know where life is going to bring you. Having something that enables you to work, and to work meaningfully, and to work in a way that helps people wherever you go in the world, is a great perk of a package. But there are sacrifices, as there are in any package. And so what I would offer to you is the balance that you need to find is in what aspect of medicine do I want to practice? Because all aspects of medicine do not necessarily require being on call 24 hours a day. I mean, residency does, but that's a year, 2 years. So yeah, a couple years of your life, you are a total slave to the system. But that's a very short period of time. When you actually choose which aspect of medicine you're going to go into, you get to decide. Do you want to work in a hospital? Do you want to work in a village? Do you want to work emergency where you're on call 24 hours? Do you want to do something that's more 9 to 5? You've got all of those options. And so my instinct is, if you have seen this medical studies all the way through to your last year, your time is very valuable. You've put a lot of years already into this. We would have a different conversation if you said, I'm thinking about majoring in biology in college and then maybe going into pre-med and then maybe going to medical school. But you're years and years beyond that conversation. You've invested years of your life into that. And those years are valuable. And there's some schooling that we get, some jobs even that we have, that give us skills and abilities that are really just kind of for our life. But medicine is something that really is very suited to practicing medicine. And given how flexible the field is, my suggestion would be stick with it. But if having all of these other things in your life is also important, well then choose a specialty, choose a way of practicing that doesn't require you to be on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I mean, don't choose emergency in a major hospital in a major city. Choose a different specialty, choose a different way of working. But you've got the flexibility. And the last piece that I would mention is, those of you who come to Satsang a lot know that after my Guru Puja Swamiji and philosophers and thinkers like Khalil Gibran and Rumi, my dad is my favorite person to quote. And when I was in school, in university, in graduate school, I was a perfectionist. I was always very, very stressed about my grades. And he's an attorney, and, you know, he graduated from Berkeley, has a good education, you know, a very successful professional. So he was never advocating a lazy life. But he was always giving me teachings about balance. And he said to me, he said, do you know what they call the person who graduates last in their medical school class? Doctor. And I love that, because somebody's got to graduate last, right? Now, I'm not blessing you that it should be you, but the point being that you get to be a doctor, regardless of whether you emerge with 100%, the top of the class, and you've killed yourself to get there, and you have stopped doing your yoga and stopped meditating and stopped your vacations to India and stopped doing everything else you want to do. But if you figure that you can actually still learn as much as you need to learn to pass and become a doctor and do what you need to do, and if you're not committed to being the top of your class, you've actually also got time to do all of these other things, well, choose that. Choose consciously. Is being first in my class more important to me than doing yoga, than meditating, than all of these other things I want to do? And if it's not, then take down the stress level one notch. And I know that's not easy in medical school, but maybe you'll be able to be sort of contagious. Instead of stress being contagious, maybe your clarity in seeing it will be contagious. Maybe you'll give other people also the permission to have lives while they study medicine. Because ultimately, if doctors are supposed to be the people who teach us how to bring balance to our life, as we know that some crazy percentage of illnesses are caused by stress. So if doctors are supposed to be the people healing us, well, they need to figure out how to be doctors without killing themselves of stress in the meantime. And so maybe you can be a great example of that. Yes. Wonderful. Yes. So, making decisions becomes so difficult when we don't actually know who we are and where we're going. If I know I need to cook dinner, there's no food in my house, I'm hungry, I'm going to get out of my house, I'm going to go to the grocery store, I'm going to buy food to eat, I'm going to come home, I'm going to cook it. It's not going to be a difficult, I may wonder, do I want to make this or do I want to make that? But I'm going to be able to make all of the decisions I need to make that include getting off my rear end, walking out the front door, getting myself to the grocery store, purchasing groceries, getting home and cooking the meal. Or if I want to keep sitting on my rear end on the couch, at least I'm going to pick up the phone or my app or whatever it is, and I'm going to order some food. I'm going to make a decision and follow through when I know what I need, when I know what I want, when I know who I am. In that moment, who I am is a physical body with an empty stomach. So I'm not even talking on the deepest, deepest spiritual level all the time. All of our decisions don't have to necessarily come always from that place. The more that can, the better, of course. But sometimes it's just a decision of, I've got to feed this body. Now I want to feed it in a way that it's healthy and light so that tomorrow morning when I wake up to meditate, because I've decided to set my alarm early and get up early and meditate, well, I want to feel light and healthy. I don't want to wake up with such indigestion that that's yet another excuse to hit the snooze and go back to sleep. So I make my decisions based on who I am and what I want. And so when you have decisions in front of you that you can't make, you need to ask yourself, all right, well, who am I? And what do I want? And if you can answer both of those questions, decisions are very simple. The problem comes with decisions, typically with our ego, our desires. Typically when people say, I can't make a decision, I've got this head-heart thing, I've got my, common sense and then my intuition thing. There's different ways that we describe that dilemma. Typically what that's rooted in is an internal instinct that does know who I am, does know what I want, and then an ego that either is afraid to do it. What if you fail? Who are you to do that? You're not good enough. You're stupid. You're too young. You're too old. You're too fat. You're too thin. And we don't do it. Or an ego voice that says, oh, that's not glamorous enough. That's not as good as I am. That's not big enough. That's not high enough. Don't you know who I am? That's not as good as my brother or my cousin or my neighbor. Or the guy who got the girl I wished I had gotten. And then we judge ourselves with that ego voice. And then again, we're stuck. We don't know what to do. Or a sense of desire. I know I shouldn't, but I really want to. I know I shouldn't, but it tastes so good. I know I shouldn't, but it feels so good. I know, whatever it may be. But in all of the cases, there's an internal sense telling us what to do, and then a more superficial ego level of desire, of fear, of temptation, that's trying to convince us that we don't know what to decide. And in these cases, it's really important to just go within and look at the different voices. So if you've got a voice saying, do A, well, look at that voice. Who is that voice? Does that voice sound like anyone you know? And sometimes we're able to, that sounds like my mother or my father or my older brother or my aunt or uncle or my teacher that I had or somebody who once told me I was stupid and worthless and couldn't do anything. So that voice that's actually telling me not to do what I want to do. Once I can pinpoint what voice it is, even if I've internalized it now as my own, if I can go deep enough, where did I first hear that voice? Where did that voice come from? With some introspection, we're usually able to get there. And then if I understand that the source of that voice is not a source that actually has my highest interest in mind, then you can discard it. Oh yeah, that was the voice of my, crazy alcoholic, drug addict uncle who, hated me and every time he saw me my whole life told me that I was worthless and stupid and beat me, and now I've internalized that voice. But the minute that I understand, that's the voice of that uncle, it no longer carries the weight in my decision-making process. And we remove these voices one by one until we're left with a voice that doesn't really have a face of the past, doesn't really come with that personality attached to it, that really does seem to have our best interest at heart, that comes from someplace very deep. A litmus test that I use for myself personally is I actually sit with my hands over my heart for a while, and with my eyes closed, and I breathe into it. Because that which isn't actually my truth cannot sustain me sitting there with my hands over my heart quietly for a while. It's like a kid caught with its hand in the candy jar, that voice, in the presence of the truth of my heart, the voice can't stay big and strong anymore. It's only big and strong if I'm not centered. And so if I can sit there long enough in the truth, in presence with myself, the other voices tend to dissipate, and the true voice is what's left. That's the voice that I can still feel beating in my heart as I hold my hands there. So I recommend that practice. And lastly, sometimes you just have to make a decision. And whether it means that you've got to flip a coin, if you really convince yourself that there's no way to make a decision, don't let yourself get stuck. Sometimes just to get yourself out of that rut and to just train your brain into thinking that you're not going to be lulled into inaction. Because that's also a defense mechanism. It's also a defense mechanism of fear. If I can paralyze myself, if I can convince myself I don't know what to do, oh my God. Well, that's also a defense mechanism because that keeps me frozen and scared. So you don't want to let that happen. So just sometimes for the sake of movement, if you cannot decipher what voice is where, you've asked people you trust, because of course that's another very good way to make a decision that you can't. Turn to people you trust, people who do have your best interest at heart. Get their advice. But if you've absolutely exhausted every single option and you are paralyzed, flip a coin. Because life moves forward. And you don't want to get paralyzed and stuck. And the truth is, there's really no wrong decisions. There's only wrong ways of dealing with decisions we've made. So if you flip a coin, it turns out to be the wrong decision, well, at least deal with it in the right way. And then it'll have turned out to be the right decision. Because you will have learned something important from it. Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity not to procrastinate asking my question.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is judgment. This is also projection. Two aspects, two different ways to deal with them, but I would recommend doing both because judgment and projection tend to get mixed up like this, sort of like salt and water. It becomes very difficult to figure out which is the water and which is the salt once they've come together, and so you deal with them together. In many cases, not 100% of the cases, but in the majority of cases, that which disturbs us most about people in the outside world is actually that which we're running from in ourself. And so ask yourself, allow this to be an opportunity for introspection. Why does that person's laziness bug you so much? Why does that person's dishonesty bug you so much? Gives you a window into yourself. What is it about yourself that you feel is dishonest? Now, objectively, you can look at yourself and say, I'm totally honest. This guy robs the store. I've never robbed a store in my life. This guy is, cheating on his taxes. I've never cheated on my taxes. Or this guy's cheating on his wife. I've never cheated on my wife. So it's not necessarily that objectively you've done it. The human psyche is very interesting. We run from our own impulses. We run from aspects of ourself that we judge unacceptable. And so, do you harbor ever thoughts of being dishonest that stay unconscious because the good person in you cannot look at those thoughts? Well, the anger, the rejection of those thoughts in you, those impulses in you, ends up getting projected onto someone who's actually acting them out. And so that which really bothers us about other people is a really good window into that which you're running from in yourself. And so go within. Every time you find yourself annoyed and rejecting somebody else, turn it inward. Where's that in me? Where is that in me? And it's not always easy to find. We have to dig deep sometimes. May not be an action, as I said, it may be an impulse. It may be a part of us that we're afraid of. That there is somebody else with the audacity to embrace it. How dare they? Well, how dare they? Because we think to ourselves, how dare you? We're telling our inner self, how dare you? You're not good enough. You're too this, you're too that, whatever it may be. And there is someone else having the audacity to live that part of themselves that I've locked away in me. And so we judge it. So there's lots of different reasons that we're very judgmental of others. Almost all of them are great windows into the self. And again, it doesn't mean that that isn't something that's wrong in the other person. But we're not the karmic police. We're not the ethical police. We're not the moral police. We're not in charge of the world. And so us noticing that it's wrong in someone else is not actually useful. Doesn't serve any purpose. They're not going to say to you, chances are, oh, thank you so much for pointing that out. I was wondering if I was a scoundrel. Thanks so much for clearing that up for me. So it's not actually useful. What's useful is when I can take it and go within. What part of that? What part of it is it that's also in me? Another aspect of it is its separation. Judgment is a way to keep us separate from the world. And so we also judge as a way of not connecting. If I can judge you and deem you not worthy, it keeps me safe from having to connect with you. It keeps me feeling safe in my separateness. And the truth is we're all one, we're all connected. And judgment prevents connection. And so this is where it's really important to let go of it. It also, lastly, it pollutes our mind because it tends to stay with us. And because it makes us feel better than others, it's this false sense of the self. There's that great story of the elder monk and the younger monk, and they're walking through the jungle one day, and they get to a river, and there's a damsel in distress, a beautiful young woman who is wanting to cross the river but unable to cross the river because it's rushing and she's fragile. And she says to the monks, "Can you help me? I need to get across the river." And so the older monk picks her up and carries her in his arms across the river and sets her down on the other side. They keep walking. Many, many hours later, the younger monk says to the old one, "You know, I really need to tell you this, but I don't understand how you could pick up that lady. I mean, we're not supposed to interact with ladies at all, and you picked up that lady and you held her in your arms and you held her close to your chest and you carried her all the way across the river. How did you do that? There's something very wrong with you. You know, maybe I shouldn't be following you. Maybe I shouldn't be learning from you." And the elder monk said, "I dropped that lady off on the edge of the river. You've carried her with you all day." And so judgment pollutes our mind. Whether that which we've judged is true, valid, or not. Either way, pollutes our mind. We carry whatever that person has done. Okay, in this case, clearly there wasn't anything wrong with it. In some cases, maybe there is something wrong with it. Maybe somebody really did do something that not good. But you've carried that with you. You've allowed that person's transgression to pollute your mind, to steal your peace. And so this is where it's such an insidious habit that we have. And again, though, like procrastination, it's really a habit of the mind. And you need to just train yourself to break it. And one of my favorite ways of training is just a really simple technique of get a little rubber band, tight one, stick it on your wrist, and every time your mind goes towards judgment, just snap that rubber band. It hurts just enough that within a couple of days, the minute you start judging, the part of the mind goes, no, 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 no. Because it knows, I don't want that sting. So it's not enough to be considered self-flagellation, but it's just enough to retrain the habit of the brain. Not to go there. Not to go there. And when you take it deeper, once you start to break the just automatic habit, when you take it deeper, see whether in every person you're judging you can actually see connection instead of separation. What of you do you see in them? And it may not be in the act of their transgression. Maybe you just have the same color hair. But what in you do you see in them? Find something. And again, it may simply be as superficial as they've got the same color hair I do. But the simple act of finding something that connects you breaks the habit of separation, where the brain is trying to do this. By looking for a commonality, it does this. And so it just gives you a new habit. And lastly, stop judging yourself. Because that's the habit that takes you into judging others. And whether you're doing it unconsciously and hence projecting this onto others, or whether you're doing it consciously and hence creating these deep patterns and habits in your way of thinking, either way, stop doing it to yourself. Snap that rubber band every time you do it to yourself also. Snap it twice. Once for others, twice for the self. And every time you find yourself judging yourself, just close your eyes and drop deeply. Drop deeply into the core of yourself. Drop into this breath. And know that in this breath, in this moment, you are exactly right. You are exactly as you're supposed to be, where you're supposed to be, who you're supposed to be. And just drop into that. And slowly, 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 the judgment will dissipate. There won't be anything to hold on to. Have a beautiful rest of your evening, a beautiful dinner, and we'll see you all tomorrow. And if you have a question that you feel shy to raise your hand and ask in public, or that came to you right after satsang ended, you're not going to be here tomorrow, or you can get your question to Ed in the back or Lori here, and they'll get it to me on the paper that we take from, or just come in tomorrow and raise your hand.